Okay, here's some help with Higher Homework Sheet 2. The questions, should you require them? And the first one. Now, the first one says that you have corners PQR of a kite. So the diagram you should draw is something similar to what I've got there. Now, if those are the three corners of a kite, then the other corner is going to be over here someplace for S. So your kite looks something similar to that. And you know from your work in second year or first year that the diagonals of a kite, they cross at 90 degrees. Okay, now first part, find the equation of the diagonals of the kite. Now remember, we know what point P is, right? It's 1 minus 2. For some reason I've drawn it there, but it's 1 minus 2. We know that Q is 6, 3. And we know that R is 9, 14. So, the first diagonal we could find would be this one here, this red one. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to work out the gradient of PR, because we can get that by using the gradient formula. And then we're going to use that gradient, and then either P or R in the formula y minus b equals mx minus a. Shouldn't be too difficult. Then the second diagonal, which is the orange one, we know is perpendicular. So for the second diagonal, the orange one, find the perpendicular gradient to the one that you found in the first part. Use the point Q in your y minus b formula. And then to find the point of intersection between them, where they cross in the middle there, just do your simultaneous equations. Okay, so the first part should be done. Now for the second part of the question, find the fourth vertex, find S. Let me make this diagram a wee bit bigger. Now remember, we've just worked out what this coordinate here is. If you do the step from Q to get back to that point, now you know Q is 6, 3. So work out how many back you need to go and how many up you need to go to get to the midpoint, which you found. And then if you do the same step backwards and upwards from that midpoint, that will then tell you what the coordinates of S are that you need. Okay, so that should be question 1. Now question 2 is about a square which is sitting on a sloping line. First question, find the equation of line AD. So we're going to have to find this line here first of all. Let me turn these round to what they should be. That's D, that's C. Right. Okay, so we're finding AD. So we're finding this line first of all. Now because we know it's a square, we know that the line is going to be perpendicular to that line. The question tells us that DC has the equation y equals a half x. So we know what the gradient of the black line is. Now if we know the gradient of the black line, that is going to tell us what the perpendicular gradient is that we need for the orange line. The question also tells us what the coordinates of A are. It tells us that the coordinates of A are 3, 4. So because we know what the coordinates of A are, because we know what the gradient is, then we can use our y minus b equals mx minus a to get the orange line. The coordinates of D for part B of the question is just going to be the point of intersection between the black line and the orange line. That's where D actually happens. So that's just simultaneous equations with your first line, which is y equals a half x, and your second line, which you've got from the first part of the question, this line here. So if you solve them simultaneously, that will give you the point D. And then part C of the question, which says find the area of the square. Well, you know that the area of a square is just length times length. So all we need to do really is find the length of a side of that square. Okay, here's your square. Now we know what the coordinates of A are. We're told that in the question 3, 4. We know what the coordinates of D are. We've just worked them out. So if you do the distance formula, that will tell you the length of that side. Once you know the length of that side, just multiply it by itself, length times breadth, and that will tell you the area that you're needing to find in the middle there. And question 3, show the triangle is isosceles. Now isosceles means two sides of equal length. So, work out the length of AC, work out the length of AB, work out the length of BC, and hopefully you'll find that two of these are identical. And if you find that two are the same, then that proves that the triangle is isosceles. So work out those missing three lengths using the distance formula. Part B, altitude AD. So that's a line through A which is at 90 degrees to that side. And the altitude through B, which is a line that goes through there at 90 degrees to that side. Okay, so how do you find an altitude? Let's do the red one. The altitude through A. First thing we're going to find is the gradient at the opposite side, which is BC, which you can do. Then you're going to find the perpendicular gradient, which should be okay to get. And then thirdly, we use the point A and substitute that into y minus b equals mx minus a. And then you repeat it for the orange line, for the altitude through B. Okay, now let me tell you that one of these lines is a special line. And when I say a special line, I mean it's either vertical or horizontal. Now, if you look at the actual question, you'll know which one I'm talking about. Remember, the vertical lines, they all have equation x equals. The horizontal lines, they all have equations y equals. You can work out which one it is for that particular question. Once you've got the red line and the orange line, simultaneous equations, I'll give you the point H where they cross. Now, the final part of the question, it's only worth 1 mark. Right? You have the diagram like that. You have this line coming down here. You have that line going across there. And you've worked out that point there. And the question says, hence show that H lies 1/4 of the way up AD. So there's AD. So work out the length of AD. Now because it's a vertical line, it shouldn't be too hard to work out the distance between point A and point D. Then work out the distance of DH or HD, doesn't matter which one you want, and you should find that this answer here, right, that DH is 1/4 of AD. Okay, so one of them comes out to be, let's say, 8, the other one comes out to be 2, 2 is 1/4 of 8, so it's 1/4 of the way up. Okay, it involves a couple of fractions, but you should be able to do that. Work out the lengths of the lines and compare them. Okay, that should help.